Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the NASCAR Xfinity Series Rewind Show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host, Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below and hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. On today's edition of the Xfinity Rewind, we're looking back at today's 36th annual SportClips Haircuts VFW 200. From the track Too Tough to Tame, the Lady in Black, whatever you call it, it is the Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina. The 1.366 mile egg-shaped oval. Went 147 laps and then just a skosh over 200 miles in this one. 6 cautions on the day for 30 laps. First one coming very early, lap 4, as Austin Cindric spun it off of turn number 4 off the nose of Ryan Truex. And it would be an early end to the day for Austin Cindric as he got a piece of the inside wall, and that was the end of it for that car. There was no repairing that one to really get it out. Stage number 1 ended at lap of 45. Ross Chastain leads every lap in stage number 1 from the pole and takes the stage 1 victory. His first race in that 42 car for Chip Ganassi Racing showed a lot of speed throughout the day. Probably had the fastest car on the track. Lap 67 would be the next caution in stage number 2 as Christopher Bell and Daniel Hemrick got together off of turn number 2. C-Bell had been a bit loose all day or at various points throughout the track, and this was another point where he got loose off of turn number 2, ended up getting into the side of Daniel Hemrick, who was inside of him trying to make a pass, bounces back up into the wall, and ends up cutting the left front tire after the contact with Daniel Hemrick. Comes down pit road to repair it, and then comes back off of pit road, blows it again, and an early end of the day for Christopher Bell as well in this one. Next caution was a lap 78 as the 19 of Brandon Jones spun it off of turn number 2. That would also bring out the caution. Stage number 2 ended at lap 90 with Ross Chastain picking up another stage victory, his first 2 stage victories of his career coming in this race. The only other caution on the day happening at lap 112 as Kevin Harvick, Ross Chastain battling for the lead. They try to take it 3 wide inside a lapped car coming off of turn number 2. That really didn't work as this track's really not wide enough to go 3 wide, especially in the corners. So because they were 3 wide, Harvick ends up getting tight off of the corner, ends up sliding into Ross Chastain. They both end up in the wall. And then Harvick ends up getting spun off of the nose of Ross Chastain. And that would really end up being the end of the day for both of them. Harvick was out at this point. He had too much damage from collecting the wall after the spin off of Chastain's nose. And then Chastain, repairing all of the damage, just ended up 2 laps down. So very unfortunate end to the day for Ross Chastain, who again probably had the fastest car in the field, put together a fantastic run, and whether he won the race or not, Ross Chastain proved that he's got some talent, and if you put him in good equipment, he's going to give you results. So my hope is that going forward, Chastain has an opportunity to run more races in that 42 car, and if not in the 42 car, in some other competitive car, because he showed today that he has the talent to compete for wins, and on a weekly basis, he's got the talent. And the thing is, he has been putting these underfunded cars in better positions than what they should be in. He's done that on the Cup side of things. He's done that on the Xfinity side of things. He's in a playoff position right now in a car that probably shouldn't be anywhere close to a playoff position. And that speaks volumes, at least to me it does, on the talent of Ross Chastain. And like I said, hopefully going forward, he proved today that he deserves a top-tier ride. And he does have a couple races left in this 42 car. He will not be in the car at Indy, but I believe the next 2 weeks after that, Vegas and Richmond, I believe, are his other 2 races in that 42 car. So we'll see what he can do going forward in that 42 car, and maybe even in a few more races beyond that. We'll have to see. Lap leaders on the day, Ross Chastain by far led the most laps in this race with 90 laps led. After he was out, it was really Brad Keselowski's race. Keselowski led basically the final 35 laps in this race. 35 was the total for Keselowski. Kevin Harvick led 18 laps in the race. 3 laps went to J.J. Yeley, and 1 lap led by Tommy Joe Martins. All right, so let's get into the results on today. And like I said, Brad Keselowski really dominated this race after Chastain and Harvick were gone. And Brad Keselowski takes home the victory. Had a little bit of competition from Cole Custer there at the end. Had it not been for lap traffic, I think Cole Custer was slightly faster than Brad Keselowski at the end of the race. Whenever he wasn't getting caught up behind lapped cars, Custer was slowly eating into Keselowski's lead at the end of the race. I don't know if he could have done anything with him if he had gotten to him, but Cole Custer was pretty fast there at the end of the race. It would have been interesting to see what he could have done with Keselowski had he gotten there. Tyler Reddick comes home with a strong finish in the 3rd position. Denny Hamlin and Elliott Sadler rounded out the top 5. Rest of your top 10 were Chase Elliott in the 23 car for GMS this week, Justin Allgaier, Matt Tifft, Ty Dillon, and a nice top 10 run for Michael Annett. The thing with the top 10 run for Michael Annett is, though, again, didn't get any stage points in this race. And because of that, even though Ross Chastain didn't have the finish he probably deserved in this race, he still lost points to Ross Chastain. Michael Annett picked up 27 points in this race, while Ross Chastain, who we'll see here in a couple of pages, finished in 25th, picked up 32 points because of his 2 stage victories. He had an extra 20 points because of those stage victories. So even though Michael Annett finished 15 spots above Ross Chastain at the end of this race, he still lost points in the playoff picture. And that's why I keep saying top 10s are not good enough at this point if you're Michael Annett. You have got to somehow try to strategize your way into a win, and they don't really seem to be trying to do that. 11th through 20th, Daniel Hemrick comes home in the 11th position. Brandon Jones, after the crazy day that he had starting from the rear, spinning off of 2 at one point, still manages a 12th place finish. Ryan Reed came home in the 13th position. Ryan Truex, after his early issues with Austin Cindric, managed a 15th place finish. 21st through 30th, we see Ross Chastain down here, like I mentioned, in the 25th position, 2 laps down after leading the most laps and probably having the most dominant run on the day. Unfortunately, 25th was all he has to show for this race. Kevin Harvick, after that incident, came home in the 29th position. 31st through 40th, final page here. Christopher Bell, after his problems, came home in the 34th position. He had a fast car. That's the thing. He came home second in that first stage behind Ross Chastain. So Christopher Bell may not have had a winning car, but he had a fast car in this race and could have had a really good run had he not had his problems. And then Austin Cindric, we talked about his problems. Lap 2, came home in the 40th position. He took a hit in the playoff picture this week. He can't really afford any more runs like that if he wants to stay in the playoff picture. Another bad run like that, and we're not talking about Ross Chastain and Michael Annett being the cutoff line. We're talking about Austin Cindric and Michael Annett being the cutoff line. So we'll see what happens in the next 2 races going forward before the playoffs. But Austin Cindric has lost a lot of points in the last couple races, and he's not quite to the point where I'd be worried yet, but one more bad race like this, and I would be worried if you're an Austin Cindric fan. All right, so that's your results from the SportClips Haircuts VFW 200. Now let's head over to the Darlington Media Center. We'll see what your top finishers on the day had to say after this one.
And I'm just, I'm going to try not to be too negative on myself. I get that rap a lot. So it's like this opportunity, man, is like once in a lifetime. And everybody at Chip Ganassi Racing and Jeff and Paulette Karpoff at DC Solar for opening this door for me. It has been incredible the last 2 weeks to get up to speed with CGR and try to use all their pieces to their puzzle to go fast in their race car. And struggling through second practice yesterday, but then coming out today, with my crew just basically telling me just go drive, just quit trying to think about everything every lap, and we did that today. I just drove the race car and took what it would give me. We were too free there that final run. We were up front, and those guys closed back up, and they kept rolling the bottom, but as long as I ran the high side, I could keep clearing them, and he did have a better 1 and 2 there, and I haven't seen the tape. I saw a clip of it just a second ago, but not the whole deal. So, there's a lap car, there's a lot going on, and I am trying to learn, right? So I'd never been in that situation, but I trust the guys I'm racing around to give me a car width. That's all I asked for, is exactly fender to fender, left and right, and we just ran out of room there.
Yeah, just got through there is the right way of putting it. But I'm sorry, was it Justin?
Jacob,
yeah, Jacob just got through there, and we had a good little battle going there for the lead between the three of us. And you hated to race that hard, but the race was on the line, and we were in the last stage, and everybody was going for it, and I went for it, and like Kevin went for it, and Ross was going for it, and it just all came together there. You could see it kind of coming, but it was a tough battle, and I'm glad we came out on top. Sometimes you don't come out on top, right? So it makes you appreciate the times you do. And they got together. It looked like a little bit off of 2. I couldn't exactly tell what happened. There was a lap car in the whole thing there, and so I saw him, just make a little contact, and I was trying to make a run to pass both of them. And next thing I knew, I was underneath them, and then it looked like Kevin was spinning, and I was trying to get away from him, and I don't know how much I missed him by, but it couldn't have been much. So glad to make it through that. That was certainly a key moment to the race, and we were able to survive and move on and bring it on home from there.
All right, so we'll take a look at your playoff grid with 2 races remaining before the playoffs, before we wrap up here tonight. And the first thing I want to mention, not necessarily to do with the playoff grid, but Justin Allgaier is currently leading the overall point standings by 16 points over his teammate Elliott Sadler. Like I said, with 2 races remaining until the playoffs begin, and that regular season championship is pretty big. That's 15 playoff points. That could really do some good for one of these guys. Justin Allgaier's already got 19 playoff points, so let's assume he doesn't get any more playoff points in the next 2 races. That would still put him at 34 playoff points. That already gives him a 10-point cushion on Christopher Bell in terms of playoff points. But that would help Elliott Sadler out a lot too. You got to figure 15 playoff points, that rockets him up into 3rd in terms of the playoff point picture. Cole Custer, though, is only 1 point, as we see, behind Elliott Sadler. So we've got a decent little battle here for the regular season championship between Justin Allgaier, Elliott Sadler, and Cole Custer that really could shake up the playoff point picture here as we get into the playoffs with 2 races remaining. That'll be something I think we need to keep an eye on here for the next couple of races as well. The only real changes here, Matt Tifft has gained another spot. He's moved back up to 8th in points now above Ryan Truex. He's gained 2 spots in the last 2 races here, so a good stretch of races here for Matt Tifft as he has now moved back up to 8th in points. Ryan Reed moves back up into the top 10 as Austin Cindric has his problems, down to 11th now. He's only got a 6-point gap over Ross Chastain now, before Ross Chastain moves into the 11th position. And like I was saying when we were back in the results, another bad race out of Austin Cindric, and we're not talking about Chastain and Annette being the cutoff line, then we're talking about Cindric and Annette being the cutoff line. And if Cindric continues to have some of the bad luck that he has had a lot this season, I don't know that 60 points is a lot of a gap here with 2 races remaining until the playoffs. If Annette continues to pull off top 10 finishes for the next couple races, and Cindric has bad luck in the next 2 races, it's not completely out of the question that Annett still points his way in. I wouldn't bank on that if you're Michael Annett. Like I keep saying, if you're Michael Annett, you've got to assume this playoff picture stays roughly the same for the next 2 races. You've got to assume you're going to be about 50 points out, give or take, especially with one more race with Ross Chastain being in that 42 car before we get into the playoffs. So you gotta look for ways to strategize yourself into a win. If you want to make the playoffs, I mean, that I would think that would be the number one priority right now, is for someone like Michael Annett down here, is making the playoffs. And you're not going to do that running top 10 every week at this point. Sure, top 10s are great, but with the gap you have to point your way in at this point, top 10s are not going to do it in 2 races. With a 54-point gap, top 10s are not going to do it in 2 races. You've got to look for ways to strategize yourself into a win, and I'm not seeing them do that. They just seem to be content with running top 10, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, somewhere back in there. They seem to be content with that. That's not how you're going to make the playoffs at this point. If you'd been doing that all season, sure, you'd be in a playoff position right now, but they weren't doing that for a lot of the season, and that's why they're in the position that they're in. You gotta look for ways to strategize yourself into a win. I don't think they've got the speed consistently that they can run up there and be in position for a win. That's why I say you gotta strategize your way into a win somehow, and I just don't see them doing that. So it'll be interesting to see here the next couple of races if maybe Michael Annett does try to strategize himself into a win, or maybe Austin Cindric continues to have bad luck and maybe somehow Annett can point his way in. But in terms of pointing his way in over Ross Chastain, I don't think it's going to happen. So that's your playoff grid following the SportClips Haircuts Help a Hero 200 from the Darlington Raceway, and I think that'll do it for us tonight on the Xfinity Rewind show. We've got more coming up this weekend for you. We will have a Cup Rewind going up tomorrow night. It'll probably be late tomorrow night. It just depends. I'd like to say I'm going to do it from the hotel because I will be traveling to DuQuoin, Illinois tomorrow for the ARCA race on Monday. But I made that promise for the Bristol race. I said I would do it from the hotel when I was in Springfield, Illinois for the ARCA race, and that didn't happen because they had basically shoestring internet and paper-thin walls, so that was not going to work out real well. So tentatively, I would like to say tomorrow night there will be a Cup Rewind go up for the Bojangles Southern 500. But if there's not one, it will go up Sunday night alongside the ARCA Rewind. And then we will have coverage, of course, from DuQuoin on Monday from the ARCA race. Or excuse me, it'll go up Monday with the ARCA Rewind. But yeah, we'll have coverage from DuQuoin on Monday. It'll be the usual stuff, maybe a little bit more. We'll see. We'll just see what how things shake out at DuQuoin, but we'll have at least the same amount of coverage that we've had from each ARCA race so far. And then we'll try to get you a winner interview after the race. If we don't have one immediately after the race from the track, we will get a phone interview set up for the ARCA Rewind show. So we will have that coming up. And then, of course, pole position Monday night, 8 p.m. to wrap up everything that happened this weekend. So, like I said, I think that'll do it for us tonight. If you haven't done it already, go down below and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss any of that and more going forward from RNN. And hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. So with that, this has been the NASCAR Xfinity Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.